Thank you so much. Everybody can hear me okay? Super, great. Okay, so remember, oh, thank you. Oh, I have a slide connector. Clicky. This session is not actually about me. It's all about all of you here. There's a well-known kind of anti-pattern when we go to conferences that we end up going there, sitting in a room, looking at people or being told things, but not actually really getting out and meeting people and connecting. Okay, so the idea of the forum is that it's a chance for us all to kind of connect, to share what we're doing with other people. Okay, and so yeah, so I think maybe obviously we're going to use the AHA slides voting mechanism. So you all need to be with your phone. The only thing I want you to do with your phone in this session is to have your AHA slides open, right? I thought we'd do a systems check right now. So I want you to do an emoji check of your feelings right now. Okay, and let's see if we can. Oh, this is great. So some surprise, some thumbs up. Thankfully, nobody in tears. Okay. So what we're going to do actually, just before we go into our kind of context there, I'm going to try and do the unthinkable, right? I'd like you all to do something kind of that you might not normally do. I'd like you just to turn around to somebody in the audience today, right, that you do not know, okay? And I want you to say, hello, my name is, here's where I work, and I am or I'm not going to the horse show house for a drink after the conference, okay? You have 30 seconds. Go for it. Hi there. I'm Aid. Nice to meet you. I am going to go to Horse Show House actually later on. Okay, fantastic. This is great. What I'm secretly hoping for, everybody has to put their things back on. What have I begun? And do you think, Darlene, if I hadn't gone to that forum at UXDX, we would never have met, right? That's the kind of thing I want 2 years from now. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is figure out who we are in the audience today. Okay, so if you go back to AHA slides, if you give us this view on who you are. Okay, so we've got a nice spread here, and votes are still coming in. Product manager, 1 in 8. I actually don't know. Oh, a PO. I thought it was a P0. A PO is a product officer, UX researcher, designer, and actually a reasonably high percentage here are developers. Okay, this is really great. Okay, and I've got 20% of people who are other. Okay, now remember, actually think about the context of why we're here today. Okay, there's sometimes this separation between the product designers and the UX researchers. And the engineering teams that actually build the product, okay? And the thing is, often engineers have a very strong customer sensibility, okay? We're trying to tap into that and see, well, how could we bring engineers along the journey maybe a little bit closer, okay? So I'm curious, though, about the other, because I thought that the first 5 groups would have would have kind of more or less put everybody into a nice little category. Would anybody like to tell me what their other is? Maybe a few hands up. We have a hand up over here. Do you have a microphone? Oh, great. Awesome. Thank you.
Engineering management.
Engineering management. Okay, awesome. Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Anybody else would like, do we have any shocking others? Like, I don't know, gymnast or florist in the audience?
Neither of those, but I'm an agile coach.
Oh, very, very interesting. We should talk SAFe later on, or even whether we should talk about SAFe. Okay, so, all right, okay, so anyone else maybe want to throw in maybe an esoteric role or party piece? Oh, okay, let's keep moving then. All right, so let's go to our next question, I think. I go to the next question, sorry, okay. So let's start with this question. Where do solutions come from? Okay, and this answer could be different depending on the kind of organization that you work in. It could be, if you're a small group, ideas can come from anywhere. If you're a top-down organization, you might see, an awful lot of ideas coming from the hippos, the highly paid persons. Okay. Okay. So what we're seeing is a really interesting spread here. Okay. We're seeing reasonably high that the ideas are coming from the business, right? We're seeing a good spread from the PM, product officer. I like it that there is 40% coming from the teams. I am a little bit worried though, because it doesn't speak a lot for team autonomy. I'm a little bit surprised there. And then of course, 10% from other, okay? So I'm always interested in the outliers. If you said other, would you like to tell us a little bit about where the other is coming from? Just put your hand up and we'll get you a mic out there. That's great, thank you.
So they can come from everywhere, users, competitors, from your mom, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's interesting actually. So tell us more about that. I mean, okay, obviously come from users, of course, right? And that could be also covered maybe by teams using discovery. I'm interested in from competitors. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think competitors have similar problems that you have. So they might have already solutions that you are looking for. So.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, I think we don't necessarily want to be copycats, right? It's always good to be aware, obviously, of what our competitors are doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts there on where the ideas come from? And as part of me, it's a little bit curious as well, because I think that when you think of, particularly for people who are doing team-based discovery, right? You got to love that, right? You got to love the vision around autonomous teams who get to, learn about customer problems and then solve the problem, okay? And not in a top-down fashion, but in a bottom-up fashion, right? I'm curious, though, does anybody have any examples of where they're doing this bottom-up work in a large company? Because often large companies simply don't work that way. Okay, a lot of the strategy comes down from on top. So I'm wondering, does anybody have any, stories, any thoughts on how their teams are able to do this sort of bottoms-up discovery? I love waiting. In my head, I'm counting to 7 very, very slowly. I know someone out there has got a little gem of information for us, right? Anyone biting?
Yes.
Oh, excellent.
So we did it within the BMW organization in,
Wow.
in the US, and we ran interference. So
You ran interference.
Yeah.
Who were you interfering with and why?
so a lot of the decisions around building a product come from the executive level,
Yes.
even depending on the market. So it comes down. Our US stakeholder, the BMW NA, we're intentionally trying to keep that from happening for the US market. So they said one thing and we were kind of doing another, where we were actually doing like more discovery work, and then we built the product that way and it outperformed the global solution.
This is really cool. So just describe that for us. So we've got senior management saying, I want what? Feature X, feature Y, feature Z, right? And then the team kind of going, thanks very much, we'll do our own thing, right? Did you ever kind of have that, awful, awkward moment when they realized maybe that you were doing something else?
A little bit. There was an IT person that leaked that we were doing a little bit differently, but it was too far down the road, thankfully. So
Okay.
And we were doing a lot of upfront like discovery work with dealerships, users, which doesn't always happen in the
That's
other
right.
ways that they do it. So
That's right, and this is awesome, because I think that, I have to say, I think that there are some cases where the executive group or the board are actually right. Okay, and I think that happens every now and again, right? And typically it's when there's a very large strategic decision to be made that covers everybody, right? I sense, though, that the companies work better when the senior people set the strategic goal. Here's what we're trying to achieve, not the how, right? Not the feature set, right? And then I think you can let the teams kind of bubble up then, okay, well, if that's what you're trying to achieve, here's what we think we should do, which sounds to me kind of like how you guys did it. Anybody else working in that kind of mix of top-down and bottom-up, or anybody wishing they were working in a company like that? We have another, oh yeah, they're great, thank you, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, something kind of similar to what was just described, but what we found was that very often the problem was coming with the solution was arriving with the problem.
Right.
So there was a problem, and there was a very sort of like, if you look at it quickly, you could, an obvious solution, say.
Yes.
So there wasn't that discovery happening. There was no solution design sessions. There was no sort of breakouts, and actually let's come at this and think about it correctly and give it the time and space it needs in order to really get at the real issue at play here. So what we sort of implemented was a hard stop on the problem statement. Give us the problem statement.
Right.
Now, stop. We'll come back to you. That kind of thing. So, what, and this is very, very new for us, but what it's allowing us to do is just give us a little bit more breathing space, and then we can come back with run a couple of solution sessions and see what kind of ideas get generated, and then pick up the conversation, better prepared. And that's starting to generate good results for us.
I think that works well, because I think you've got smart people on the teams, right? And they want to do the right thing, right? And they want to do what they were hired to do, right?
Right.
Did you ever run into difficulty with the senior people, maybe larger egos, larger ideas, or were you able to manage that?
Not from an ego point of view, more from a time point of view. So a lot of the issues, a lot of solutions are thought up on the spot. It's amazing how many solutions go into production that have been just dreamed up that day, or that it's like you find yourself in a sprint planning session, and it's like, how do we do this? And we just whoever speaks the first gets to do whatever the solution is. So it's a way of like putting a stop on these shortcuts happening.
Absolutely. So there's an interesting thing. So there's a lot of product managers and there's a lot of researchers. There's also a lot of people over here who haven't talked yet. We might come after you in a few minutes, right? I'm curious to know, in terms of where these ideas come from, do you find a sort of an anti-pattern happening where you do this amazing customer outreach or this amazing customer research, and then you tell people about it and they do absolutely nothing? And I'm just curious, has anybody run into that? Because I think it's like a big anti-pattern. Love any stories around that. Oh, we have one over here. Great. Thank you.
I work for an insurtech company, and one of the big things we have is return users to our website.
Right.
And many years ago, there was a return user form designed in a PowerPoint slide.
In a PowerPoint slide.
So
PowerPoint-led development, amazing.
yeah, that was way before my time. But recently, we've been working with the UX designers and stuff to do our competitive research and seeing what other competitors are doing. So we come up with this whole business case and done a whole demo to people above us, and they were just like, oh yeah, design looks good, but you don't really understand what the customer wants. So it was completely forgot about. And then as developers, we went ahead and built it and was like, what's the worst that can happen? We could run this as a 1% test. Mm-hmm. And it's now going fully into production. So
the better version coming from the developer is fantastic. Okay, yeah. And actually, I do think So in some of our applications at Google, we have a lot of traffic, and that actually means we can A/B test because you've got a lot of volume there, right? And I'm often surprised at the obvious solution that I would think works, how it doesn't actually work at all, right? And it's really amazing. It shows the value of getting up front with user research and testing and making sure that we get it right, okay? That's great. So, but it's interesting, so far, I think that some of the stories have been about the development teams intentionally not doing what their strategy or their leaders told them, which I admire. Okay, I think, okay, let's move on then, okay, because I think this maybe comes to the age-old battle between product management and engineering lead. What level of involvement does engineering have in solution development? Okay. Wow. Now, I have to say I am really surprised at the way this one's coming out, right? I actually am really deeply surprised by this. I would have thought that maybe we would see a world where, you know, we've got like a highly inspirational UXer or product person who is calling the shots in terms of what the solution is, right? And I'm actually seeing here that, you know, we see not just that the engineering folk provide kind of feedback, but actually the engineering team help define the solution, right? I find that very, very interesting. So now I'm going to ask you to have a little think, okay? If the engineers are the people who made the product, right? In a sense, you know, they have the cognitive model of the product, but also of the underlying implementation. They know how things are made. They know the limitations, right? And in some regards, then, if you are asking your engineers to define the solution, right, is that going to be a limiter? Are they going to limit the solution to the world that they know? You know, the classic thing is that if all you have is hammers, then every problem looks like a nail, okay? So is it that the engineering teams here, they just own all of the stuff and therefore they're highly involved? Or are these engineering teams really amazing, connected with the customer in some way? Okay, that's my question. I'd love some thoughts. This side of the room has been very quiet. You guys have been doing okay? Anyone there? Yeah, we have this is great, thank you.
So I'm ancient, I go back to the dot-com bubble. When UX research was human factors, human-computer interaction, usability, my role was to define the user requirements, the user problems, prioritize those for the user, and then work with the engineer to figure out what was feasible, what wasn't feasible, and to design an optimal solution with the business constraints. And I think that's the right marriage, is that the engineers aren't saying what the problem is, but there is somebody who has talked to the user, knows something about the user and the environment, and is working with them to figure out the optimal solution. And I also spent a number of years in the Department of Defense, and that there were people who defined the requirements, and then the government contractors, Boeing, Bath Iron Works, et cetera, their engineering team work with human factors researchers to come up with the solution that will pass the testing that is required at the end. So I actually like these results because I think you don't want somebody without a technical background to be coming up with a solution that's not feasible. Right. But you want the engineers to understand the problem and the context of the problem and come up with an optimal solution for that.
Absolutely, right. And we'll talk about, like, you know, how and we may come back there in terms of how do we engage, you know, with the engineers so that they are capable of having that impact, right? But I'm also curious to know, and maybe I'm talking to a bunch of unicorns here, right? But have you ever found engineering teams who really don't care? I'm getting big nods over here. So I'd love to hear your story if you can. It would be great. Let this lady first, maybe.
I'm a bit afraid to say, but I will say. So we're developing a new product, and it's hardware, by the way. I don't do
Hardware.
anything.
Okay, yeah.
I do operations. The engineering team has developed a great hardware device that is not thinking about the customer. It's great, it's awesome, it looks nice, but
Yes.
it gives a lot of problems.
Yes.
And we have addressed this one to them, and they're like, the product is better and it's nicer. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't fit the other product like needs. And they're like, okay, let's fix everything else, not the hardware.
Yes.
Everything else, speak to the customer, talk as much as you can with them,
Yes.
and explain them how it works. And it's not, it shouldn't be like that. It should be the other way. And it's just like, no, 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 no. And then, yeah, so we're there.
Wow. No, absolutely, yeah. We have another one behind you as well, I think, there. That's great. Go first. Are you backing away? Okay. We have another hand up over here. Great. Thank you.
All right, so I think that good solutions come at the intersection between roles.
Interesting.
So engineers, from my point of view, especially in product companies that are trying to do some innovation or something amazing, or especially in scale-ups and startups, if people are working in those here, need to be involved a bit earlier in the process than probably in big corporate world where you have a lot of silos. So I have worked as an engineering manager with teams of engineers that are very motivated to be involved in discovery at early stages. Just to understand the problem space. And product managers, designers, UXers, researchers working a lot with the problem space and interacting a bit more closely. So the solution is born at the intersection of these roles. It's not engineers come up with it by themselves in a silo. So it's mostly about collaboration and finding the great options and iterating a lot on those solutions together.
I love that, because I actually kind of sense that you're right, okay? But I've also been around since the .com, right? And I've actually been in many cases where the intersection point has been a fierce battleground, okay? Where you end up with a product manager or a designer saying, that is not your job. You know, I am saying that this is the right thing, right? And an engineer going, well, I don't care what you're saying because I think that this is the right thing, right? And then I actually have seen it get physical, right? So, has anyone kind of witnessed this kind of tension, right? You still have the mic, yeah.
Yeah, I have. I have noticed that I've been in a situation like that before in a bigger company. And I think the way I have managed to mediate those kind of situations is through experimentation. So, okay, you have very opposite ideas here, or you really think that the way you want to do things should be done, then let's run a 2-week sprint, a spike, or whatever you want to call it. Let's try something, let's prototype something, and let's put them face to face and then see what's the better solution overall.
You mentioned a really interesting word there, which is mediation, right? It sounds to me that you actually have a pretty good kind of sensibility around conflict management and conflict resolution, right? That's one of those soft skills, right? Everybody here needs to have it, I think, right? Because we talked yesterday about the reasons why project fails. A lot of the time, it's people. A lot of the time, it's people just not getting on. Any other thoughts of where maybe the conflict between, let's say, UX design and engineering has escalated, and maybe how you've dealt with it? Yeah, we've got one over here. Great.
So we have 2 different vendors, and one works in the back-end side, building the APIs, and the other team from the different vendor, they work in the front end and doing the connection between API.
Yes.
And I'm head of UX in the company, and I was mediating literally like that.
You're the marriage counselor.
Exactly. and in the meantime, none of them did what we were asking for.
Wow.
And they were blaming each other.
Yes.
So that was a huge conflict. They didn't talk, they didn't work together, but they were all part of the same Scrum team.
Yeah.
So the solution I found is to bring them to the design thinking, to present the research, really bring them to the design process with us, and then they start understanding what needs to be done. And the interesting thing is that then they start pointing pain points for us that didn't come up in the user testing, didn't come up anywhere, because the way the solution architects, they build the APIs, that they start finding the gaps and, oh, we need to fix this API.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to fix this connection with the API. So now we really work very well together, and they really know their responsibilities, and they stop fighting against each other. So.
Job well done, because that's usually impossible with multiple vendors. It's well, not impossible, incredibly hard, but like obviously well done. You know.
Thank you.
But so yeah, I mean, you know, I find and it's interesting because some organizations actually. You know, we talked about the collaboration and the intersection between roles, right? And that I think is, you know, if the conflict is, you know, if the friction is generating warmth, you know, rather than melting everything down, I think it can be very, very positive, right? But I do know that actually some organizations are very specialized and rigorous in their roles, right? So they're very clear. A product manager does this. A UX researcher does this, and an engineer does something else, right? And that sometimes gets infused into their incentive systems, their bonus structures, etc., right? Is anybody working in an organization like that? You know, like these are typically larger organizations where the specialisms are very, very strong. You know, I'm curious, you know, any examples there? No, this is interesting. Okay, this is interesting. So it sounds to me then like you're all like in a more fluid kind of like less structured space, which I think is actually great. Okay, so then the next thing is right. I'm looking then. So as we generate the ideas, right? How do we get the engineering teams who really are usually asked to pump out code? How do we engage them? You know, with the ideation or with the, you know, with the user. Let me give you two examples, right? In an e-commerce company I used to work for, every employee, so all of the engineers included, everybody got a credit, right? It was worth about maybe 50 euros, 100 euros, and they got that a month, right, to spend on the site, okay? And basically this meant that everybody was eating their own dog food. Right, engineers, if there was a problem at checkout or in returns, the engineers were all over it because they wanted to be able to spend their, you know, their lula, okay, their credit. One other way to create great customer empathy, this is actually the same company. We had a very strong customer focus. Was we had every engineer join the customer services group for a day. And take customer service calls. Actually listen to people. I'm going to a wedding tomorrow and your stuff hasn't arrived. What am I going to do? That's the kind of thing, right? And that creates amazing customer empathy. So from all of you here, what are ideas that maybe you have used to kind of get that connection, right, with engineers to get things more customer focused?
No, hello. Yeah. I think if you have a good set of engineers already, you may be fortunate enough that they have good empathy. And going back to one of your earlier,
yes.
I'm here.
Hiya,
going back to one of your earlier topics about the solution architects and the engineers, I'm fortunate because I have a good group of engineers that I work with, but they have empathy because we've been dealing with a legacy product that hasn't worked really well. So we've had to fix those problems. And so we're now into a new product. The solution architect said, you know, you're going to do it this way. Right. And we've pushed back and said, no, we're not going to do it that way because we know that that won't work because we've been dealing with these issues for these customers. We're not going to put in a solution that we know is going to be bad for the customers and experience. And, oh, by the way, we're going to be the ones that are going to get called in the middle of the night because it's not working properly.
Of course.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah. Sorry, is my mic working or it's good? Okay, great. Perfect, yeah. I think that's actually, that is a really fabulous point. And actually, one of the things certainly that I've learned along the way is sometimes we get to work in a company where we are blessed and we don't know it, right? So in other words, you end up with an incredible set of customer-focused engineers. Everything just works and it's brilliant, right? The customer is protected, okay? Sometimes though, we work in a place where maybe that connection isn't necessarily there, you know? So. Great. Any other thoughts or ideas on how you? Here we've got someone over here. Great. Thank you.
Thanks. I work for a non-profit, so it's a little bit easier maybe to engage the engineers in that respect because it's a charity.
Wow.
But we do a food rescue project, so it's about food redistribution and getting food from retailers and restaurants out to charities. So when anyone joins the company, you go out on one of these food rescue project runs.
Amazing.
And you see the food tangibly going from one place to the other, because we do see that engineers are stuck behind their computers and they don't see it in real life, and it's hard to visualize. However, I suppose my question is, how often do you do this? Because an engineer might do that when they started the company, but that's it, then we don't do it again. And should it be something that we're doing on a frequent basis, or when you get to a certain level of seniority in the company, you go and do something else that's almost like a reward for hanging on? They definitely, you lose sight, I would imagine, of the purpose.
And I think actually, but that's a great example. So I used to come home, kind of all stressed out, and my wife would say, "Age, you're selling handbags. There's nobody's dying." But actually, that's an incredible thing. The purpose is really clear, right? But I think what's really interesting there is that moment of you could tell an engineer, "Oh, this is what's happening." You could show a picture, right? But it's the human connection when you take them there, when they actually see it, and that's what's most lasting, I think. But you mentioned frequency there. I suspect like quarterly is too much. Maybe yearly kind of would be good. Do you know what I mean? I think, right? Certainly if it only ever happens once, I do think there's like a half-life on that connection. And over time it's going to wear down, and I think it has to happen definitely more than once. But it's a great question. Okay, great, this is super. Any more ideas where, we've got one right behind the cameraman over there. Super.
So we've done a very nice thing with our engineers, which is involving them in the user interviews. So for the internal product, they've been part of the interviews. That's one thing, and a second thing is encouraging our operation teams, who are the users, to giving kudos. So basically, if they like something, we say, "Hey, can you just give a kudos to this person who worked there," or sharing it on Slack, so they can also feel the love and they can feel the engagement, and it worked pretty well. So.
That's amazing. And actually, I'm curious, so have you ever gone as far as having the engineers fully lead and orchestrate the customer outreach?
No, not yet. It's always together with the PO. So,
okay.
So yeah, they go together as well with the designers. So that's a group of a squad working together with the as well as meeting together in person for a co-working event. So we are a fully remote company, but we meet sometimes with with diverse teams. So with operations, sales, engineers, product design together in one space and just brainstorming the ideas. So.
Great.
That's also very nice.
I asked that question because I've seen, and maybe it's because I've been blessed with a particular group, but I've seen a group of engineers actually fully arrange the customer outreach, right? And what's nice about that is that means the engineering team is there for the engineering team, right? As opposed to, "Oh, we're here because Aid told us we had to go, and the customer research person has done," it's like, it's really nice to get that engagement. But I love that. Okay, before we go to the next solution, next thing. Oh, we have another person over here. Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, so this is a story, but I'm not sure how practical this would be for all the companies. So
okay, we love stories.
One of the companies that I initially worked in my early careers, it was a taxi app.
Yeah.
So we kept getting the same kind of an issue or a bug that we need to fix.
Yeah.
But there were only like 5-6 developers who were working at that point, like engineers. So what our customer success team did, they made us travel with the driver for 3 days. We sat with the taxi driver.
For 3 days?
Yeah, like each engineers had 2 drivers. So spent 3 days, the whole day with them.
Wow.
So when they use the app, how it affects their personal lives, we get to see that. So then that kind of gave us the importance of the things that we are trying to fix. But I'm not sure how we can do this in a bigger companies or like bigger products. But if you start this in the level when you start the company, maybe that's at the value of the company, then everybody who comes in buys the values and then work according to that.
I think this is great. And here's the thing. I think, listen, if you can afford to do that kind of contact in a small company, you can definitely afford to do it. It might be harder to arrange, but you can definitely do it in a larger company, right? And I think it could pose that. I often wonder, like, I've ordered a cab 5 times, right? They cancelled 5 times. Why are they doing that, right? It's not that there are 5 bad people. There's something else going on in the system that we need to understand why it's happening, right? And you only get that when you really, use the product.
Like one of the driver kept losing a tip money that he was getting for the whole day. And like that was some issue in the app, but then he thought like he's not being good in his driving and stuff like that. But like we could see in the real life that he is losing that because of a bug. As a software engineer, we could see that, oh, that's a bug that I have it.
Yeah.
He's losing money for it.
Amazing. Amazing. All right, okay, we have time for maybe one more story. Let's have a look. Do we have, super, again in the front, super.
Sorry, the same.
Can you come closer to the...
Sorry, I didn't know if I did right or not. So the engineering deployed a new onboarding process for the customer, which was great, but the ordering part wasn't looked after. So I have to clean all the orders manually, and I also filed the bug, like this is not working very well, so I have a lot of work now. And they were, oh no, so you can manage that, so there's no problem. So I said, okay, stop cleaning the orders. And then on the email they sent about the launch, I pinged there and I say, well, since this time, the orders hasn't gone. So yeah, they are creating them, but they're not leaving.
But they're not leaving,
And they were, oh, okay. So I was like, I helped for a bit, but if kind of like, yeah, you created me a problem, but you didn't listen to me, and now I'm creating a new one. So it's a shiny new onboarding process, but they didn't think about the other side. So it was just like, okay, I'm just going to stop doing this, and then make it bigger and bigger, and it's like, well, we're not shipping.
I think you may have done the right thing there. So and just to recap, if I think I have it right. So there was a problem. Orders were coming in, but they needed to be fixed or cleaned before they could actually be processed. And maybe you were there busily trying to fix them on the fly. And this is a great example of heroics, right? Well, one person saw the problem and went in to fix it, right? But actually, heroes are a bad thing in organizations, right? You actually don't want them, right? What you want is people to say, there's a problem here in the system, and I'm going to let it get bigger so that so you'll actually fix it, right? Which, of course, I think was the right thing to do. So.
Sorry, it took me a long time to learn the second part.
Oh yeah. All right. Okay. Right. Let's go to maybe. I think that I can probably guess the answer to this one based on the mood of the room. Right. Is it a good idea for developers to get involved with solution definition? Is that because one person voted? Okay, right. When you see 100% of anything, you get a little bit worried. I gotta say, I am really pleased with this, right? And I'm just going to maybe, we're close to the end actually, but this is really interesting. Not a single person here has said that it is a waste of time. Not a single person? Not a single person has said that, right? So I think that calls to the value of some of the discussion we're having today, right? Engaging early, bringing the user research to the engineers, bringing the engineers to the users. This definitely has value, and I think what's really amazing, it's not just so that they can do they can understand the context, but that they can actually bring knowledge to the game and influence the decisions, right? So this is great. Okay, so we're just at time, so maybe we'll just do one more emoji check because I love emojis. Let's see if we can have a flutter of love hearts. And I've almost got a flutter. There we go. This is fantastic. All right, that's super. Listen, thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.